morning, or whatever time it is that you're tuning into this. Over the weekend, I've been working on an article, trying to kind of sort through what I'm thinking and feeling about what's been happening over the course of the past week. And this is it. So I'm going to read it for you. Thanks for listening. 3 lies that we have believed. Number 1, we believed that actions were more important than communication and character. We believed you could untangle these 3 elements of life, or being. The Gospel of Matthew records, "It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth that defiles a person." What we produce both reveals who we are and produces who we are becoming. We believe that Donald Trump could act justly out of a corrupt character and while communicating with vileness, and we were wrong. Similarly, we believed we could engage each other in hostile arguments online without damaging what we call real life. And many of us have realized that the real world and the virtual world of social media are not so easily separated. There are folks in church we don't like so much anymore. People we take a wide path around in the parking lot because that social media confrontation has us wary of face-to-face interaction. Social media emboldens us to say things we would not say in person. We're disembodied and fooled into thinking communication in virtual space gives us license to berate one another. Communication, action, and character are all knotted up together. Throughout the last 4 years, we have told ourselves time and time again that actions were more important than character and communication. Evangelicals accepted Donald Trump on the grounds that he would do our bidding, even if he did it in a vulgar manner, even if his past was tainted with vileness, and even if he openly said vile things. We hung our hats on the argument that character and communication could be separated from action. As long as President Trump appoints conservative judges, stands up to China, and doesn't raise our taxes, we don't really care how he says it or how he does it. Every act is communication. To be is to communicate. As I sit in a coffee shop typing silently, I am communicating to those around me. My values, my tastes, my choice of clothing, my flavor of latte. We are communicating through our presence in the world. In this way, my communication is at the same time revealing who I am and it's creating who I will become. It is utterly foolish to believe communication can be untethered from identity. Joshua Gibbs said, "Every act of imitation is an act of becoming." Yet somehow, as the white evangelical church, we were fooled into believing Trump's positive actions could somehow outweigh his questionable character and reckless communication. It is not a matter of one outweighing any other. These elements of being are not separable. We act out what we are moving towards. You cannot act justly and communicate unjustly, nor act justly and maintain a vile character. The past week of mayhem serves as a culmination of the last few years and a final revelation of the absurdity of this notion. Donald Trump's communication, character, and action cannot be untangled or essentialized. Who we are is fundamentally composed and expressed in each of these 3 elements. A virtuous leader must display the integration of wisdom in communication, character, and action. Going one for 3 will get you into the Baseball Hall of Fame, but it makes for a really lousy leader. Number 2, we believe Donald Trump was a Christ figure. The church is a bride, and the white evangelical church wed itself to a man who was not Christ. The language and symbolism of Trumpism has cast Donald Trump as a Christ figure. He is said to have come down the escalator to drain the swamp. From his high position, Trump is said to have descended to lead the people. He enters into the realm said to be corrupted and dirty, or a swamp, to do the work of making the land great again. This is clear language of a Christ figure. Jesus himself descended from heaven into a dark land to inaugurate a new kingdom. In the Christian account, the hero is abandoned by all those closest to him in his final hours. This is significant because Christ is not simply on the side of truth, he is the truth, incarnated. As Christ prays in the garden, his disciples fall asleep. At the Last Supper, the traitor leaves to do his work. After his arrest, Christ is denied by Peter. He's abandoned by his followers and convicted by the court system. He goes to the cross utterly alone. We have been telling this story and replacing Christ with Trump. Sometimes without realizing it, and sometimes intentionally. We have become so convinced of his righteousness that his words alone are truth. He has become the symbol of truth. He has been rejected by those near him, by religious leaders, and by the court system, yet many evangelicals remain confident in his words. Trump has even coined a term for anyone who would deny him. He calls them rhinos. It's an acronym for Republicans in name only. Christ said, "Whoever disowns me before others, I will disown before my Father in heaven." That's from Matthew 10. Trump has said that to be Republican is to stand with him to the bitter end. He has positioned himself as a Christ figure, and we have largely accepted him. Anyone who denies Christ is anti-Christian. However, Donald Trump is not the truth incarnated. He is not the Christ. And it is for good reason that he's being denounced and abandoned, from his own staff and political party to Christian leaders across the nation. The inner circle. In the days after the insurrection at the Capitol, in which Trump supporters stormed the Capitol, scores of folks once loyal to Donald Trump have jumped ship. As of the writing of this article, at least 9 members of the Trump administration have resigned from their posts. Among them, Elaine Chao, the Transportation Secretary, Betsy DeVos, Education Secretary, Mick Mulvaney, the former Chief of Staff. Mulvaney said, you can't look at that yesterday and say I want to be a part of that in any way, shape, or form." Stephanie Grisham was the First Lady's Chief of Staff. Sarah Matthews was the Deputy Press Secretary. Matt Pottinger was the Deputy National Security Advisor. Ricky Niceta, White House Social Secretary. Ryan Tully was the National Securities Council Senior Director for European and Russian Affairs. Tyler Goodspeed, Chairman of the White House Council of Economic Advisors. Republican Senator Ben Sasse said lies have consequences. This violence was inevitably the ugly outcome of the president's addiction to stoking division. Trump is being abandoned by those once loyal to him, including Lindsey Graham and his own vice president, and this is certainly not without good reason. The court system. For months, Donald Trump and lawyers have claimed the election was decided unfairly. They brought allegations in more than 50 lawsuits. On every occasion, save possibly 2, they either lost, had their case thrown out for lack of evidence, or simply withdrew. The Washington Post writes, at least 86 judges from across the political spectrum, including some who were appointed by Donald Trump, have rejected at least one post-election lawsuit filed by Trump or supporters. Donald Trump has lost time and time again, even in courts where he has appointed the judges. The Supreme Court, 3 members of which Trump has appointed, have refused to hear his case for lack of evidence. Yet when we view Donald Trump as a Christ figure, it doesn't matter how many staff resign, how many courts throw him out, or how many leaders speak up to denounce him, because he is not merely telling the truth, he is the truth. Those at the Capitol were not there on behalf of the Republican Party or conservatives, no. They were there on behalf of one man only, and they flew his flag, and they marched in his name. They were whipped into a frenzy by his words. They went so shamefully far as to erect a gallows to execute the vice president because he did not side with their Christ. David French over at the Dispatch writes, there was a giant wooden cross outside the Capitol. Jesus saves signs and other Christian signs were sprinkled through the crowd. I watched a man carry a Christian flag into an evacuated legislative chamber. We evangelicals were present there, like Peter in the garden whipping out our swords for Christ. To our great shame, we have believed Donald Trump was our Christ figure, and some of us are adamant that we will never deny him, no matter what the cost. We would drive to D.C., we would plunder the Capitol, we would die for Donald Trump, our Christ. May God forgive us. Number 3, we believe that the end was nigh. This is again David French. If you argue that the very existence of the country is at stake, then don't be surprised if people start to act as if the very existence of the country is at stake. Every 4 years, evangelicals are told the current election is all that stands between order and chaos, the first world and the third world, capitalism and socialism. And once again, for the umpteenth time, we bought the lie that if the Republican candidate didn't defeat the more liberal challenger, the USA would delve into a socialist state. We think the gas prices will soar. They'll take our guns, our churches will be stormed, and will be pumped full of vaccines. Yet somehow, each and every time, life just sort of goes on. And it will again this time. In 4 years from now, we'll hear the same tired warnings again, and they'll be false again. Perhaps even more absurd than the claim that handing power to the opposing party will inaugurate the end times is the remedies we've concocted. Folks on the ground at the Capitol riot say that there was Christian music blasting and Jesus Saves flags flying. If all the evangelicals storming the Capitol had been Muslims playing chants over speakers, we'd all be crying it was a terrorist attack. MAGA supporters, evangelical Christians among them, quite literally stormed the castle in a crazed last grab at power. And no, we cannot pin these acts on Antifa, as helpful as that may have been. It's pretty clear that's not what happened. When we raise the stakes of which party will lead us for the next 4 years to the level of apocalyptic existential crisis, we get an insurrection. We get Confederate flags marched into our country's most sacred building. We get those elected to represent the people of the states ushered into bunkers while crazed rioters break through the doors. We get police trampled and killed. We need to stop reading end-time prophecy manuals. We need to stop believing that the bitter end is nigh every election cycle. It is not only faithless, it's stupid, and it's wrong, and it's damaging. We have believed these 3 lies. That communication was less important than character and action, that Donald Trump was our Christ figure, and that the end was nigh. My fellow evangelicals, my neighbors, my friends, let us be people of Christ. Let us put this foolishness behind us. With every word and every act, we are transformed into who we are becoming. Let us speak and act in love that we might become love. May Jesus, through whom all things were made, be our only Christ. May we do the work of believing and put to rest these recurring fears of apocalypse. May these 3 lies be left behind. Peace.